Hi, everyone. We're going to get going now. I'm Michael Warner, Vice President, Business Development for the banking and finance sector here at Environics Analytics. I'd like to welcome all of you to the exciting session that's going to be focused on providing you with a view of how CST Savings has acquired a better understanding of market successes, market gaps, and market opportunities in Canadian neighborhoods. I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, Jeff Beck. Jeff is CST's Chief Marketing Officer. Now, before I ask Jeff to come up, I just want to have a special thank you for coming today. Jeff was actually asked yesterday. Jeff's colleague, Peter Lewis, was unfortunately not able to make it. He's due to the hurricane that's coming up the coast. So this is certainly 11th hour acceptance, so we do appreciate it very much. Please welcome Jeff Beck.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so I guess I'll lower this a little bit. I guess some of you are probably asking yourself, who is CST? So let me take a couple of minutes just to introduce you to us. Hold on. There we go. So CST recently went through a brand new branding exercise, a new name. You may have heard of us in the past as Canadian Scholarship Trust. CST has a very proud history of helping Canadians save and invest for post-secondary education. As a matter of fact, we're really proud of the fact that, I guess, over 60 years ago, through our advocacy efforts, we worked with the government to develop and launch RESPs. And that's the business we're in. We're in the business of registered educational savings plans. CST Savings is part of a foundation, but I don't like to describe CST as a not-for-profit or a charitable foundation. I like to describe it as a purposeful, driven organization. And what I mean by that, it has a purpose whereby we believe that we're trying to enable all Canadians to access post-secondary education and make sure that they have the financial means to achieve their goals and quite often their parents' goals. We, even though CST is a foundation, there are 3 for-profit operating companies under the umbrella of the foundation. So when it comes to RESPs, when it comes to the investments of those RESPs, the more success that we have, the greater the surplus that we can contribute and provide for the foundation to provide scholarships, bursaries to Canadians, especially underprivileged Canadians, or continue our advocacy work. So I want to talk a little bit today about how we partnered with Environics and help the CST Savings side of the business understand our existing customer base and really leverage that in terms of pulling out the insight from the data to better help us in terms of our strategic plans going forward and understand where the real opportunity markets lie. Hold on. Maybe my right hand will work better. Here we go. Okay, so let me start off a little bit about the challenge. So when it comes to CST, unlike other financial institutions, we really have a monoline, right? We have one product, it's RESPs. Our challenge is, as a data-driven marketer, personally, in a data-driven organization, we are lacking the most critical success element, and that's data. The government provides us with some data on RESPs, but it's really at the aggregate level, and there wasn't that much that we can do with it. So and that's the reason, we partnered with Environics Analytics to try and get that critical data to understand our marketplace, our customers better, and understand where we were winning and where we were losing. We try and position ourselves because we do compete with other financial institutions, including the large banks. We try and position ourselves as the authority, as the expert in the RESP space. After all, and no disrespect for anyone here in terms of my competitors or the big banks, but the reality, or at least my opinion, and I come from a big bank. I actually left one of the big banks actually just a few months ago to join CST, but my observation, and I'm choosing my words carefully, is that the big banks don't necessarily pay that much attention to RESPs. And the reality is, it's a very complex product. It's hard to sell, it's hard to explain, and there's just, I guess, in terms of the public, there's a little bit of confusion out there. The reality is, it's an incredible product, and there are a lot of individuals and many, many Canadians that benefit from it. As a matter of fact, CST has helped almost 1 million Canadians, save and invest for their post-secondary education. And what makes CST unique or different from other financial institutions is our approach to investing and how we invest the funds specifically for the objective of post-secondary education. And the reality is the portfolios are structured different. The assets are balanced differently, or there's a glide path. So as the beneficiary or the student that will benefit from the funds when they graduate and go on to a post-secondary education, as they age and get older and get closer to maturity, when the funds will be available to pay for tuition, the assets in the accounts are rebalanced, right? So at the beginning, when the beneficiary is much young, there's a much more aggressive growth strategy. Then later on, the assets are redistributed a little bit. And as the beneficiary reaches the age of high school graduation, obviously there's a much more conservative approach. So we like to position ourselves as the experts and unique in terms of the way we invest for RESP purposes. We face a second challenge. Hold on. And that was with COVID. The bulk of the sales through CST or CST Savings was done on a more traditional channel, face-to-face selling with a network of almost 1,000 sales reps across Canada. When COVID hit, all of a sudden face-to-face selling was obviously out of the question. We were lucky in the sense that just a few years prior to COVID, we had built an alternative RESP product branded CST Spark, which was really our digital offering. So when COVID hit, it allowed us to make that transformation, to adjust from virtually selling 100% of CST Savings products face-to-face to 100% through the virtual channel, and we were able to make that adjustment overnight. So that challenge also represented an opportunity, because in the past, before COVID, each of the sales reps and sales agencies were assigned a region within Canada. But now through virtual sales, we were no longer constrained, or they were no longer constrained by geographic barriers. So we changed our model and we changed our business. So the project that we engaged with Environics Analytics was about understanding our marketplace, the gaps, the markets, looking at the markets, understanding where we were successful, trying to understand why we were successful, but more importantly, looking at those markets where we weren't that successful in terms of penetrating the market and understanding why we weren't successful. Can we take the reasons, the insights in terms of where we were successful and apply those to the markets where we had a lower performance? And that would identify the opportunities, right? The opportunities in terms of which markets represent markets where we were successful in penetrating, and there was room to penetrate, achieve a greater level of penetration in those markets. Which of our customers, perhaps we were not getting our fair share of their wallet in terms of contributions to their RESPs, and are there opportunities to upsell those customers and increase the assets on a per customer basis, and really deepen the relationships, as well as get referrals from those customers to help us through and acquire additional customers. So that's the strategy. That was the strategy, and the exercise was identify the gaps, understand where we're winning, where we're losing, and then apply that in terms of our strategic planning going forward. So I mentioned that we were starving for data. Enter CST. They introduced us to Wealthscapes, which was absolutely phenomenal in the sense that Wealthscape, for those of you that aren't aware of it, provides, I think, up to or close to 200 statistics on financial statistics on Canadians from about 30 different sources. So all of a sudden, we had the type of data we were looking for. And we were actually quite fortunate in the sense that just recently, Wealthscape added RESP data to the database. So we were really fortunate. So all of a sudden, we were able to provide Environics Analytics with our customer data, transactional data, so they can see what the size of our customer accounts were, what the average transactional values were. They layered Wealthscape on top of that, and we were off to the races at that point. So there were three critical success metrics that came out of the data, and this is what we were interested in looking at. And really, there are three different ways of measuring our market share. The first one was market penetration. So of all those households that had RESP accounts, what was our share of those households? And surprisingly, I was pleasantly surprised that our market share was higher than I had expected. Again, we didn't necessarily have that level of data. And it led me to believe that CST is not a niche player at all, and that the size of our accounts, the number of RESP customers, actually rival some of the big banks. However, when we take a look at the second metric, market share, which is expressed in assets, what's our fair share of the RESP assets, we were slightly under the average. So there's an opportunity there to increase our assets, which leads me to the third metric, which is wallet share. So wallet share would be the average client or customer account level. How much is in their account with CST relative to the market? And we realized we were slightly under-indexed there. Again, representing an opportunity. We have some assumptions in terms of why. That may partially be because of perhaps our legacy, our heritage, in the sense that maybe our sales reps, or maybe we seem to be more attracted to some of the lower income households. That's not where we necessarily want to play. Or perhaps it's the fact that we have gone through quite aggressive growth over the last few years. So as we onboard new customers, and we target customers very, very young, not the customers, but the beneficiaries, to the fact where we're actually targeting expected parents or parents of newborns. So if we have each year an increased growth and we're bringing in brand new customers that are just starting their RESPs, that would explain that the average total balance of their account is lower when compared to other organizations where they may have a higher skew of older accounts that are closer to maturity. So those are two assumptions we will investigate to determine if that is indeed why we have a slightly lower average contribution level than the market. But what it is telling us is there is room to be a little more aggressive, to do a little better in terms of customer engagement efforts and increase the average contribution value. So When the customer transactional database was put together with Wellscapes, Environics put together this 2x2 grid, which really, really helped us. So when you take a look at it, they plotted product penetration on the x-axis and wallet share on the y, and I think almost everybody's familiar with this type of grid, and it allowed us to determine what the right strategy is for each of these 4 quadrants. So if I start with the top right, where we would have high penetration, we have high penetration and high wallet share. Well, this is win-win, right? Whatever we're doing it right. Let's continue to do that. There's probably still more opportunity to acquire more customers in this market, but let's understand why it's working for us. But, you know, don't break something that's not broken, or don't fix something that's not broken, right? Then if we move down to the bottom right, here's a situation where we've got decent product penetration, but we have a low share of wallet, which means we can be a little more assertive. We can do a better job increasing the asset values of our existing customers, as well as new customers that we're acquiring that fit within this segment. So there's an opportunity, again, for customer engagement, and really prove to them, show them, usually through financial literacy and information in terms of the benefits of increasing your contribution early. You know, the benefit is for RESPs. You know, we try and encourage our customers to optimize their annual contribution. So if you contribute $2,500 a year, you're getting the maximum government grant of $500 every year, which is available for just over 14 years. So we try and educate our customers to take advantage of that benefit, which is the matching government grant up to $500 a year when they contribute $2,500 a year in their contributions. And you know, I'm happy to field questions later about RESPs if there's anybody that has some questions, because as I said, it is quite complicated. Then when we take a look at the top left quadrant, well, that's our star quadrant, right? That's where we've got high share and high wallet. We're doing everything right. I think I may have mixed up a couple of quadrants before, but this is the one where we really want to do everything we're doing right. And we want to work closely with our sales agencies, with the sales reps within these markets to understand why they are so successful. That's critical learning that we want to then factor into our sales training programs and ensure that we can now apply that to other agencies and other sales reps. The bottom left is really, you know, that market where we haven't had much success, where we haven't had much success in terms of penetrating the market or the ability to get above average contributions per customer. So it may be an area where, I don't say we give up, but we may not emphasize it. We'll deprioritize it. It's not necessarily, given the fact that we have limited resources, it's not necessarily the markets where we want to place a great emphasis. So what we can do now is we can take a look at different regions, and through the Environics Analytics research that we did, we can apply a different strategy based on each region, where we believe the customer segment falls. The analysis that we took a look at our penetration, the market share, and our wallet share based on different regions, you know, by provinces, by metropolitan areas. We looked at the top 10, the bottom 10 markets and provinces and metropolitan areas. But where it all crystallized was the ability for Environics to take that data and visualize it on this type of map. Because all of a sudden, we can see the relationships. We can see how certain markets are similar or dissimilar from other markets. And there are some surprising surprising insight that came out of that. As a matter of fact, and I know this is all data here. You don't actually see the regions and the names of the markets, and that's because of confidentiality purposes. But I can tell you that there were some surprises that came out of it. And one surprise was when I took a look at Ontario, which I assumed was going to be, in that top left quadrant, that star quadrant. I happened to notice that Newfoundland, which I would have assumed would almost be diametrically opposed from Ontario, landed in the same quadrant. As a matter of fact, they were almost next to each other, like kissing cousins, and that was a real eye-opener. So this type of data visualization became very, very helpful for understanding and pulling the insight out of the data. And then we were able to see what markets fell in which quadrants, but more importantly, the relationships between those markets. And we were able to do that on a CMA basis or a provincial basis. All that to be said, what we are doing now is we're trying to understand, again, with our sales team, what works, right? What markets have we identified where we believe there is big inroads to happen, where we can penetrate the market to a much greater extent. And we're following through. As a matter of fact, we just onboarded a brand new sales agency in one of these key markets where it was identified that we do have significant room to grow, both in terms of market penetration and wallet share. So we're actually taking this information, this data, and we're actioning it. As a matter of fact, by onboarding this sales agency, we're almost doubling the number of sales reps that we have within Canada, which is really, really nice. We're also developing new training programs based on our success. What's working, what's not working. We're developing digital tools for our sales reps so that now that they're selling our products, our RESP products online, how do we take what was traditionally sales collateral, printed sales collateral, and how do we digitize that to turn it into selling tools, again, to help communicate the benefits of RESPs, but more important, the specific unique features of the CST RESP. On the marketing side, very similar. Marketing is responsible for acquiring qualified leads to feed into the sales channel. So we can now custom our messaging. We can identify specific markets, specific segments, and customize the messaging. We can identify existing customers and which customers we believe there's an opportunity to increase their average contribution value if they land in one of those two corresponding quadrants. And that was the first exercise. We're almost complete the second exercise, which is a segmentation exercise, looking at our existing customer base, developing custom segments, understanding, through the PRISM segments, understanding our unique custom segments, quantifying those segments, overlaying them in terms of our regional perspective, because that's critically important, and then developing personas for each of those. That will then go into the strategy. It would allow us to activate that strategy in terms of, and I always have this competition when I go to any conference, and I've heard it twice already, and I'm about to use it. But whenever I hear somebody, and a marketer usually say, it will allow us to send the right message to the right person through the right channel at the right time, and I say, it's a drinking game. Everybody pick up your glass and take a drink, because I just said that. But that's what this data will help us do. It will determine, from a prospecting perspective, the personalized message, where they are in that funnel, what segment and what type of information and communication will resonate more with them. I think that's about it. We've got about 5 minutes left according to my countdown clock here, and happy to answer any questions in terms of the research that has been done here. Don't be shy. Any questions? Any questions about RESPs? Really? Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I've noticed a couple of trends, actually. Oh, hold on. I've noticed a couple of trends, pandemic-related trends, for one thing. What we have noticed is even though company-wide we're skewed, I mentioned we're skewed slightly below average in terms of contribution, what I have seen is that people's values have changed, right? So people are spending more on those things that are important to them. And over the last few years, we have seen our average funding or customer contribution go up because people are valuing. People have always put a high value on post-secondary education, but I think, and we saw some of the demographic stats earlier, that because of the pandemic, people's disposable income has gone up. A couple are put on top of that the fact that their values have changed. So we're benefiting from that. So overall, people seem to be contributing a little bit more to their children's RESP contribution. Other than that, over the last couple of years, and to be perfectly honest with you, or last 10 years, I'm only at CST for about 5 months, so I can tell you a little bit, but the other trend that I'll see, and it helps us, is that it's also due to the pandemic. There was an unbelievable growth or proliferation of people taking control of their own investments. We saw an explosion with robo-advisors, with self-directed investors. So there's a lot more confidence in that, and people, and maybe it's a time, they had more time to educate themselves, they had more time at home, they've become more digitally savvy, so there is a huge increase in the digitization of investments, and we're fortunate enough, and I haven't talked much about it, but at CST we do have a digital offering, which is CST Spark, so we do play in that space, and I do see a huge increase in our customer base coming in through that channel. We're, I'm perfectly agnostic in terms of the traditional sales channel versus the digital channel. At the end of the day, I think it's up to the customer to choose the channel that best meets their needs. Is that Jan? Yeah.
Would you like a mic?
This is not a personally motivated question or anything. What about grandparents?
Oh, great question. That actually... Yeah, no, yeah. It is, it's actually one of our top 3 priority target markets going forward. And I benefited because my in-laws started an RESP account for my daughter, and my daughter benefited from that. But the reality, it is an important segment for us. And one of the things we're looking at, and we're just doing some exploratory work when it comes to grandparents, believe it or not, it's not just about encouraging them to give the gift of education to their grandkids, but it's also helping them to save for their post-secondary education. We've done some research, and it's unbelievable how many seniors are now going back to university and either completing their first degree, a second degree, a third degree. I was recently just talking to somebody who is completing his third degree and going on to a master's degree. So we're expanding our offering not just to the traditional child, but helping Canadians of all ages save for post-secondary education. But to answer your question, there are some tax advantages to to RESP. So regardless if you're a parent, an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent, when you contribute to an RESP, and when that beneficiary graduates and now you can withdraw the funds that the government grant money, along with the income that was gained from the contribution, that proportion of the RESP is taxed. But the benefit is it's taxed at the beneficiary. So if it's a child or a student, in most cases they're at a very, very low tax level, or it may be, you know, a grandparent who also probably has a very low income level. So that proportion of the RESP is very, very favorably taxed, and similar to an RRSP, it accumulates tax-free while it's in the RESP, and the contribution that was put in to the account comes out without being taxed because it was contributed post-tax. So there are some real tax advantages to the RESP program. So thank you for that question. I think we may be out. Are we out of time? Okay. Happy to answer any of your RESP questions, although I'm not a tax accountant. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That was outstanding.